Let's first take you over to Paris, which is seeing simmering tensions on ground. Clashes between police personnel and protesters reported in several parts of the city. Yellow Vest protesters have joined the labor unionists for the traditional May Day marches across the city. These are the latest visuals that we're getting to you. Police resorted to using tear gas to control large crowds gathering near a major metro station there in the city. The May Day protesters are taking to the streets and violence erupting in several parts. Large groups of shouting protesters have been sloganeering against the police, mixing with other protesters wearing yellow vests. The authorities have warned of radical activists during the protests as well. Many fear a repeat of the violence that had marked some of the worst yellow vest demonstrations since November. More than 7,400 police personnel have been deployed across Paris. Security personnel are also using drones to get an overview of the situation. Reports of scuffles in different parts of Paris as protests and demonstrations turn violent on May Day. It's an annual tradition, of course, but it's seen a mixture of the yellow vest protesters joining in with the trade unionists as well. The protesters have been rejecting the reforms of President Emmanuel Macron. This is largely a protest which has seen which has, of course, escalated over the last few weeks, has seen tension on ground in Paris. Scuffles now being reported during the May Day rallies in different parts of the city. More than 7,000 personnel have been deployed along many arterial points. Simmering tensions as clashes between police personnel and protesters being reported in several parts of Paris. Yellow Vest protesters have joined the labor unionists for the traditional May Day marches. Police resorted to using tear gas to control large crowds gathering near a major metro station. Large groups of demonstrators who have been shouting out slogans against the police have mixed with other protesters wearing yellow vests. That's the situation as it unfolds in Paris. These are the latest visuals that we're getting to you of those demonstrations. Authorities have warned of radical activists joining the protests as well. Many fear a repeat of the violence that was witnessed during the Yellow Vest demonstrations that, remember, have been witnessed in Paris over the last few weeks. Let's get in the latest from our correspondent Elena Casas-Montanez joining us from Paris. Elena, help our viewers understand better what the situation is looking like as we speak.
Well, as you can perhaps see around me, tens of thousands of Yellow Vest protests have joined this year's traditional May Day march. Now, the march is led by unions who have been struggling to stay relevant since the beginning of the Yellow Vest crisis. The Yellow Vest protesters essentially reject traditional politicians as they do traditional unions and say they don't feel represented by them. But they do have a lot of the same aims. The unions are calling for President Macron to reverse planned public sector job cuts, to put more money into public services like schools and hospitals, and they're concerned about the spending power of people on low incomes. So they do have a lot of aims in common with the concerns of the Yellow Vests. We do see them converging today, but also, of course, the unions are concerned about extreme elements within the Yellow Vests that could cause violence.
All right, so Alina, we're seeing the Yellow Vest demonstrators also joining in with the labor unionists. Is that the reason why these demonstrations have gone out of hand?
Well, there's a variety of reasons. Certainly there's an extremist hardcore of the Yellow Vest that we see when they come out to demonstrate every Saturday, whose essential aim is to fight with the police. And we've seen some of those people today. There's a group at the front of the demonstration of what are called black blocs, people wearing black balaclavas, who do essentially come out and intend to clash with police. Police tactics have also come under a lot of criticism. The chief of police of Paris was sacked, of course, in March after a particularly violent Yellow Vest demonstration which saw a restaurant on the Champs-Élysées set fire to. The new chief of police is hoping not to repeat any of the same mistakes that led to that level of violence, and he has told his officers to to go and directly confront people who might start to be violent more quickly than they have in the past. So we have seen large numbers of riot police who are quite heavily armed out today. We just saw a group of them come past us to head up towards where the front of the demonstration is. So they are certainly going to try and head off any violence as quickly as possible today to try and avoid repeating some of the mistakes that have led to vandalism in the past.
Absolutely, and as you're saying, there have been several attempts that have been made by the Macron administration to reach out to several sections of these Yellow Vest demonstrators, but those attempts have failed so far.
Yes, certainly Macron has tried various things to try and reach out to the Yellow Vest protesters. Just last week he made a series of major policy announcements which came...
Several major policy announcements that were made, and that's been one of the primary reasons why the protesters have not been convinced. So these are protests that we have been... All right, let's go back across to Elena. Elena, go ahead with the point that you were making.
So as I was saying, Macron last week made a series of major policy announcements in an attempt to calm the Yellow Vest crisis. That came after the great debate, what Macron called the Great National Debate, which was 2 months of policy suggestions being put to the government by ordinary people in town hall meetings across France. And as a result of that, he announced last week that income tax will be going down for most people, that the minimum pension is going to be increased, that a dose of proportionality is going to be introduced to French elections, and that some planned cuts to public services like hospitals in rural areas are going to be reversed. But for many of the Yellow Vest protesters, certainly for ones who turned out today, that isn't good enough. The question, though, is whether, when Macron's so unpopular with this group of people, there's anything that he could announce that would stop them demonstrating.
Right. As Elena is telling us, those attempts that have been made by the Macron administration to reach out to several sections of the Yellow Vest protesters have failed so far. Just last week as well, we saw a renewed effort from the Macron administration. But as we speak, these are protests that have escalated on the streets of Paris. Yellow Vest protesters have joined the labor unionists. These were supposed to be May Day rallies, an annual tradition that takes place across the world, across major cities in the world. It's a celebration of the contribution of the working class. At the same time, we see these demonstrations now turning violent. And let's also get a quick update from Elena on the security situation. More than 7,000 security personnel have been deployed on the streets of Paris. Elena, what are the next measures that the government is considering to take to try and control the situation from going further out of hand?
So they've deployed about 7,500 police onto the streets of Paris today. That is a significant number. And we are starting, you can see that we've had a lot more people come in this direction in the last few minutes while I've been doing this live, which is clearly because they've fired tear gas further up the road and everyone's moving away from it. So you can see it now. We might have to leave you now because there are quite a lot of people coming this way, probably with riot police behind them. So I think we might have to leave you for the moment because I think we're going to have to move since they've clearly fired tear gas about 100 or so yards away.
Absolutely. Stay safe, Elena. Thanks very much for those updates and perspectives, helping our viewers better understand the gravity of the situation as we speak. These are the latest visuals that we're getting to you from Paris of those demonstrations which turned violent in several parts of the city. These are Yellow Vest protests on May Day that was supposed to be largely peaceful, but with the Yellow Vest protesters joining with the labor unionists, violence reported in several parts of Paris. More than 7,000 personnel currently deployed to tackle the situation. Drones have been deployed as well to get the security personnel a better understanding of the protests as they escalate across Paris. We keep tracking the